Sounds good, great. Yes, very easy to remember the names, and we've chosen to take this format because it's been a long day and we like to sit down. So this is a bit of a fireside chat between us. We're still looking for the fireside, but I'm sure it'll turn up at some point. But great to be here, and really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you all. I'm going to just briefly regarding the introduction. So I'm John Pearson. I look after the commercial side of the business. John Littlechild is our CTO and co-founder, and in fact the author of our platform. So hopefully if there's any questions at the end, we're happy to field any of those if anything comes along. So just by way of introduction, if you need to link in to me or the business, by all means grab the QR code and we can happily have a chat at some point in the future. Okay, so just I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because we're going to come back to it. We're going to talk more about some of the ins and outs of integrations and some of the challenges that you have. But just to set the scene in terms of what Syncursyv is, so we are a managed integration platform service. So what does that mean? It means that we actually build each integration alongside you, the client, or you, the implementation partner. We then host, manage, proactively monitor and support that integration. We can deploy that in multiple different geographies around the world. And we work with implementation partners, technology vendors, end user clients, and we work not just with HubSpot, but actually many different systems where we are carrying out the integration work to make sure that the data syncs in the right way for those organizations. Just a little bit about where the platform is deployed. So the platform has been in place since 2016, so it's very well established. Globally, we host our platform in Microsoft Azure, so we're only really limited geographically by whatever Microsoft is doing. So most of our deployments tend to be in Europe, UK, North America, Canada, that sort of thing, and also Australia, but we can deploy into any geography, so we never hit any data residency issues or problems like that. So maybe that sets the scene just in terms of who we are and where we're operating. In terms of the types of business we work with, it's just about everything. So we work with Premiership football clubs, we work with business schools in Australia, we work with investment banks in New York, all sorts of different organizations, and some of these are obviously using HubSpot. And what's been interesting for us over particularly the last 12 months or so, we've been approached by more HubSpot implementation partners who are keen to work with us because we're able to help them as well as working with clients directly. So hopefully that sets the scene. But just to move things on, what is it we actually want out of integration? Because none of us are terribly excited about APIs and foreign key resolution and authentication. Oh, John is, yeah. But most of us really aren't. What we're looking for is a business outcome. You know, we want the data to appear in the right place, at the right time, accurately, so that we can better perform in our business. We're looking for better deal closure, faster ways to service clients, more marketing accuracy, less wastage, perhaps a bit more of a competitive edge, or just really solid automation across the business. These are the key things that we want as business outcomes from our integration. So we actually have that as a very strong mindset in the business whenever we're dealing with partners and clients. We like to start with what is the business context, because if we understand that, that makes everything else in the conversation a lot simpler because we've got a strong reference point. But the important thing to note is that the critical thing is the business outcome. It's not so much about the technology, it's very much about delivering the data where it should be, turning up in systems at the right time. So in in our journey working with different clients and partners, and certainly I guess in this room, there are a mix of end user clients who are using HubSpot every day. There are perhaps some agencies and partners who are helping those clients and working with them to implement and make the most out of those systems. Well, we work with both of those in both of those scenarios, and what might be useful is just to get a little bit of perspective on some of the mindsets that people have when they're actually looking at integration. So we thought we'd start off just by getting a little bit of perspective on the end user. So as an end user looking at integration, there's a number of things that you have to consider. Now, John and I have been around the block a little bit, it's fair to say, we've encountered many different integration scenarios. But what we're going to do here is just have a little bit of a chat about some of the issues and challenges that people face in this context. So I'm going to be the interviewer here. I feel very Terry Wogan, although it's a bit old now, isn't it? But just to kick things off, if I am an end user business and I've got a business application like HubSpot, for instance, and I'm facing an integration challenge, so I've got some data to sync from one or a number of different systems, what are some of the thought processes and what are some of the things I have to consider in that context, just from your experience in dealing with these, John?
So typically, end users can solve this in kind of one or two ways. So they can come at it from a pure, let's build something from scratch. So they've got a custom need. Perhaps there are integrations on a marketplace that aren't going to fit the bill. So they say, right, let's go and build something from scratch. To do that, you've got to have the resource to do it. You've got to have the people to do it. And in a small business, that's probably hard to find. You've got to go through the whole design process. You've got to go through the whole DevOps process. You've got to actually build that thing. It can take a long time. It can be very hard. We've spent 6 years building a platform. So it's not an overnight job. And fundamentally, when you get that thing live, you've got to love it. You've got to look after it. You've got to maintain it. You've got to support your business on it. And your needs for that integration will most likely evolve. They don't stand still. So you've got to make sure that you can continue to throw that resource at it to maintain it and evolve it as it changes. And actually, particularly in smaller businesses, we see and have experienced that there is risk that very often you end up with the kind of one person that knows the solution. You know, they went off and they built it and then they leave. And then you've got a black box that you don't understand and perhaps doesn't work anymore. So there's a lot of risk of taking that route. Another option might be to go out to the market and find a SaaS tool, Make, Workato, Zapier, those kind of guys. And again, they have their place. The advantages they bring is they're going to give you all of the infrastructure, they're going to give you the tooling, but there's still a knowledge that you've got to learn, there's still a technology that you've got to learn, and all of the things that happened before still apply. You've still got to maintain it, you've still got to evolve it, you've still got to make sure somebody understands it when the guy who built it has gone. So all of those pains don't go away. The other thing is those guys, they're selling you a technology, so they're selling you a product. So they're not invested in your outcome, as you spoke about earlier. They don't particularly care whether your integration is working well for you. All particularly they care about is that you're paying your subscription. So yeah, you know, there are solutions there, but there are risks and pains that come with them.
And in your journey working with clients and partners of different sorts, have you encountered any different scenarios where some of these things have cropped up?
Yeah, so probably a good example, some years ago, back in 2018, I think it was, we got in touch with, I'll describe them as a global serviced office provider, who had their own custom data warehouse that they'd built in-house, so they clearly had the development capability in-house. They had a CRM system that they were in the process of implementing. They had an existing CRM system in play, and they wanted these systems all to integrate. And they went off, and they actually got a contractor who was recommended by Microsoft to design them a solution. So this guy is not going to have been cheap. He would have been contractor rates, so many £100 a day. And he spent, I believe it's about 3 months coming up with, or trying to come up with a design for them. Now, their landscape was very dynamic because this warehouse that they built was changing and evolving very fast. So consequently, he was probably to some degree trying to hit a moving target. But actually, after 3 months of time, he didn't have any particularly good solution for them. They got a bit desperate. The CRM system they were implementing was running out of time. They wanted a solution fast. They came to us, and I think it was, we went in on a Monday, and we had a proof of concept working for them by certainly the Thursday or Friday.
Yeah, so speed, I guess, is a major factor in all of this as well, because if you're able to remove a lot of the pain and headache of setting up infrastructure and code management and all that stuff that a platform can provide, it accelerates things, but it also helps to have people who actually understand it, have the expertise around integration around it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. We don't want our customers to have to learn technologies. We don't want them to be technology experts necessarily. We want them to talk to us about their business needs, about their data and where they need their data to flow and what they need it for, so that we can put it in context and we can say to them, great, okay, we can do that for you. And actually, do you know what? That might be a really good idea, or that might be a really bad idea because we've seen somebody try to do that in the past. So for sure, our experience can be brought to bear into that delivery to get a better value out of it, better outcome.
And does that extend into the support as well over time? Because it's not just a case of setting up an integration and walking away, because our platform by its nature is ongoing. And so there's the ongoing monitoring and support that goes with that.
Yeah, so once you get an integration live, as I said earlier, you need to keep it running, you need to keep it error-free. Errors do happen. We can't escape that, and we monitor that. We alert customers to that. We alert ourselves to those things when they happen. Sometimes we're able to resolve them ourselves. Sometimes we need to talk to the customer to understand the best approach to resolve an issue. And as I said earlier, also they evolve. So you can't just sit back and look at your work and go, isn't that great? Because actually next week or next month or next year, you need to be doing something with that.
Okay, so we've looked at the scenario from an end user client, and obviously going that in-house option. If they can find development resource that are available, they're happy to manage the code and infrastructure and maintenance and so on, then that's a perfectly good route. But there are other options, including ourselves in that context. From an implementation partner perspective, what are some of the considerations that a partner has to think about in their context? Because obviously it's a little different. You know, they're working closely with a client, they're perhaps delivering a project, and the integration element is just one work stream in that piece.
Yeah, so for implementation partners, there's a few factors to consider, and actually a lot of what we've just talked about still absolutely applies, because those things don't go away just because you're an implementation partner. But I mean, let's be clear, you know, a lot of implementation partners have good capability in delivering integrations. And absolutely an integration partner doing it themselves, whether they're building something from scratch, whether they're using a tool that we talked about earlier, may well have its place. However, it's not generally their specialism. So that the HubSpot implementation partners in the room, other vendor partners, you know, they are specialists in those platforms and in those applications and those solutions and the business sectors in which they operate. And actually, as Claude and some of the guys were talking about earlier, these platforms are the features are being added to them so fast all the time. You know, if we look across the industry, particularly in CRM and AI and whatnot, the change is so fast that actually these implementation partners struggle to keep up. They can be overwhelmed with the features that are being thrown at them to learn and go and educate their customers on, that actually integration is hard. It's another hard thing to try and include in your brain space. So actually, what they can benefit from us is that we can take that pain away from them. They also don't have to go and learn another technology, or in fact a number of technologies, because we have partners who we know in the past have used a variety of different technologies to deliver different integrations. So somewhere in that business there is somebody or people and teams that have to know those technologies. So we can take that pain away from them. Fundamentally, we can take that risk away from them, because very often integration can be seen as a risk to a project, particularly if it's not a great strength. And actually, there's also a competitive edge to be had, because where you see risk, often partners will see cost, and they might even front load a project, the cost of a project, to try and deliver safely an integration. But actually, we can mitigate that off, because we can say to them, well, actually, you know what, we can do this, we can do it at a cost-effective manner, we can do it quickly, we can do it risk-free. And the other thing to be clear about as well is we're not trying to steal their business, because in reality they are the specialists in HubSpot or the ERP system, whatever it is. They know it far better than we ever will, but we know integration probably better than they will. So consequently, they're going to get the best of breed, because they're going to get to be able to do what they're really good at, and we'll come along and help them by doing what we're good at, and ultimately de-risk, probably de-cost, and get a better outcome for them.
Yeah, it's interesting. Some of the, typically the two scenarios we found ourselves working with implementation partners is, one, the implementation partner has quite good skills, they're very strong in that area, but maybe they just don't have the time, they've got other priorities to do, and so they may want to involve us in that scenario. Or the case is that the partner needs to be able to deliver an integration for a client and just has very little skill, or perhaps a little appetite or motivation to do that part of the project. And I guess that's where, you know, certainly the partners that have come to us, we've found working with them works extremely well, because we work as a very good collaboration between ourselves, working quite intimately with both them and the client to get the job done and deliver the business outcome. But again, you know, there are many implementation partners out there for whom integration is just a natural part of what they do, and they do it very well, and that's great. We're probably unlikely to engage in those scenarios, but much more likely with those partners where actually they just need some help. And it's not just in the delivery. We've often found ourselves engaged in pre-sales conversations when they're trying to win business, and helping them through those difficult integration conversations to actually win the business in the first place.
And from a support perspective as well, particularly I would say in the smaller partners, there is a support overhead there that they need to be able to carry forward, you know, on a contract basis or whatever it is, and they have to find the ability to deliver that support.
Yeah. So just looking at that picture across those different options, an end user could take an in-house approach, an implementation partner could obviously, you know, deliver it themselves. I guess the third option is a managed integration service like ourselves. And so how would you frame the key difference in working with a managed integration service like ourselves?
So probably the two key areas in which we work is, as you said earlier, we will build the integration, and then we'll run it for the life of that integration, manage it and run it. So from a build perspective, the key difference is that as either an end user or as an implementation partner, you're not talking technology with us. So if you go and use Tray.io or something like that, somebody's going to have to sit down and start thinking about technology and foreign key resolutions and existence checking and perhaps even infrastructure and that kind of stuff, actually you don't need to have those kind of conversations with us because that's all sorted. We'll do all that. We will be able to have a conversation with you about your business processes, about your business data. And we can talk, we're not HubSpot experts, as I said earlier, but we can talk the end user's language. So if we're working through an implementation partner or directly with the end user, we're talking their language. We can sit and listen to them and talk to them about, the fields that they need and what that means to them and in what context those fields are important and so on. So there's a very different conversation that happens with someone like us because it's much more business focused and it's much more outcome focused, as you said earlier.
Yeah.
And then from a ongoing management and maintenance perspective, the key thing is which we're proactive in that world. So our platform is monitoring itself all the time. It's alerting us if something goes amiss. It's alerting customers if they wish when things go amiss. And actually, because that's happening, we're able to react to that. Sometimes we can resolve an issue without the customer even kind of ever recognizing it happened. Sometimes we can go to a customer and say, hey, did you know this was going wrong? Maybe they've added a user to one system and not to the other or something like that. Those kind of things happen and we're able to go to them and say, do you know what, this went wrong. Maybe have a look at this or maybe do this to fix it. Or actually, go and fix the data and then we'll make it resync and sort the data out. So we can be really proactive and constructive with the customer in solving those issues when they occur.
Yeah. I guess that is a key thing because any integration that you set up is a living, breathing thing. It has to constantly work over the long term. It's not just a fire and forget type thing. And having that proactive, obsession, looking at the data, making sure the data flow stays error-free is really key in helping those clients.
The other thing that we often see in clients is that evolution of the requirements. So because we're managing the integration, we're doing it on an ongoing basis. When a customer comes to us and says, oh, actually, we're just going to make this change to this system and we need that to be reflected over here or whatever. Oftentimes we just say, fine, just tell us what you're doing and we'll make the change. And we can make the change and we can do it. If you have a testing and staging of our own, we can go through that process with you, or we can put it straight into live if you want. And we can do that, and we usually do it within an hour or two. It was all part of that support process. So it's very quick and easy. Funnily enough, the story I often think about is back one of our very early integrations. There was a mapping between two fields in two systems, a set of fields in systems. And the number of combinations of those mappings was over 400 variations. It was horrific. And actually, we soon worked out the best way to communicate this and it was changing regularly, like almost weekly. And we worked out the best way to work this with the customers to say, actually, here is a spreadsheet of the mappings. When you change those mappings next week, go and change the spreadsheet. And then what we were able to do is take that spreadsheet and go and write a little bit of code that created the mappings from that spreadsheet for us automatically. So they would change the spreadsheet, they would do it in their language and their understanding, and then it would take us about 5 minutes to get that implemented when they changed it for them. So the flexibility we have is very, very fast.
Yeah. It's a key part of the overall service is that that ability to work intimately with us, I think, is quite key because it's a bit like having an integration teammate working alongside you for the long haul rather than signing up to a product that you have to learn and stay in touch with that you may not always get the best support for. So, yeah, interesting. Okay, just moving on in terms of time frame to deliver these things. Typically, when we're working with clients, it will take us a matter of days to create an integration. And we're integrating many different systems from portals to CRM systems to ERP, PSA, all sorts of different things, HR. The constraint that we find is usually not so much with us. It's it's working at the pace that the client is able to work at in terms of sorting out things like access to systems and authentications and things like that. So those are the things that tend to slow things down. But in terms of working with us, we tend to work very quickly. And the price structure that we have is also very simple. So we have an initial setup fee and then an ongoing monthly fee for the use of the platform and all the monitoring and support. So there's just two elements to what we provide, and it's a very cost-effective option in the right place, in the right circumstance for for certain scenarios.
Just to talk to the speed piece, we had a project with a quite well-known burger chain.
Yes.
And they came to us and asked us for a quote for an integration between two systems. I forget what they were. One of them was ServiceNow. I can't remember what the other was. And they went away with the quote and they disappeared for, I think it was almost a year to the day. And they genuinely came back and they said, we've had a go at this. We've not succeeded. We don't know why they didn't succeed. We don't know whether they couldn't do it. We didn't know whether they got into analysis paralysis, whatever it was. But actually they said to us, does your quote still stand? And we said, yeah, of course it does. And we had them live 9 working days later.
Yeah. So I think that's the advantage of having a platform that's built for purpose, and that's very much what we have to accelerate things. This actually came up in a recent conversation we were having with a business over in Germany, actually, that we were doing some work with. But one of the key reasons they chose to work with us was actually because they were facing a lot of change. And I just wanted to pause for thought for a moment here, because inevitably in your business, regardless of your business, there will be change. And your systems will change. You necessarily will be looking at different applications for different parts of the business, whether it's in sales, finance, operations, HR, logistics, whatever it might be. And if that change is constant and that digital evolution is constant and that swapping in and out of systems is never going to end, it's really turbulent. It's very difficult to sort of deal with all of that. One thing you can create in that digital landscape is a little island of stability in terms of integration. So it can be very comforting to know, actually, it really doesn't matter what system comes and goes. We've got an integration approach and a platform that we can rely on, that we don't have to think about, because we know we can get the data from A to B, however we need to. So just another dimension to thinking about integration is it's not just necessarily getting something from A to B. It can become quite an island of stability in your digital landscape as things are changing in a whirlwind all around you. Just something to bear in mind. Okay, I'll leave the slide up here just to kind of wrap up. But I guess some of the key points, and certainly some of the things John has highlighted, and the experience we found working with clients is there is an overall feeling that they are de-risking their integration. And that's hugely satisfying. Whether you're a small business, and we work with small businesses, or a large global enterprise, and we work with those too, the ability to de-risk the integration, have a team of experts around you, know that you don't have to worry about finding connectors and learning platforms and code and infrastructure and all those headaches. All of those things are removed because you can talk in the language of a business outcome, and in a matter of days that outcome can be delivered for you in the things that we're doing. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of insight into Syncursyv and some of the things we're doing. It's very exciting working with more and more HubSpot clients and partners. We've done some very interesting integrations, from aircraft data providers to subscription management and all sorts of other things into HubSpot. And we'd be very happy to talk to anyone at the appropriate time if they feel we could add some value somewhere in the mix. So unless you've got anything else to add, John?
I don't think so.
Okay. I think that will end our little fireside chat without the fireside. And if there's any questions, I'm happy to open it to the floor, and by all means, fire away. Yeah.
You talk a lot about business outcomes, and we're in a situation at the moment where we've got two CRM systems and HubSpot in the middle with very weak integration into one system. And we can obviously see the advantage of integrating that to manage subscriptions and the risk around GDPR. But the bit I'm struggling with at the moment is building the wider business case for that investment in integration. Is that something you help clients with at all?
Well, it's interesting. It kind of it kind.
The question for the camera.
Yes, sorry. Yeah. So the question is, there's a particular integration need at a client, but it would be helpful if the notion of integration, or could be expanded on to help with the business case. So we found ourselves in a very similar scenario, literally just in the last few weeks, where the client was looking at do we adopt some kind of platform like this for a particular integration? And they recognize that absolutely inevitably they will be changing the systems around, even the one that they were putting in at that time. They knew they were going to replace it in 3, 4, 5 years. Equally, there are many other systems across the business that need integrating. Maybe it's HR to PSA, or a expense management to something, or there's lots of different scenarios. And it just creates an atmosphere of calm and confidence if you have an integration approach that works. Our platform will link anything to anything. It doesn't rely on connectors. So we have no reliance on connectors, building a connector, finding a connector, downloading a connector. We don't have any of those constraints. And yet we can still deliver at phenomenal speed. So for a client, again, it's horses for courses, whatever is appropriate for that unique business case. But typically, a client will recognize the value of having an approach that is potentially repeatable across other areas in their business, that won't just solve that point problem, but help them in the longer term as well.
We have a few scenarios where we have clients who have had a program in place of replacing systems, numerous systems over a period of time. I'm thinking of one in particular where over a period of about 4 years, they replaced probably about half a dozen systems and got them down to about 2 or 3. And throughout that journey, we were there with an integration that was syncing data between various systems, data warehouse, and so on and so forth. And as they took systems out, or they changed those systems, or they migrated into those systems, we were able to keep adapting what we were doing for them, to keep them running, keep the data synced as they needed it. And as they retired those systems, we turned the integrations off, and as they added new systems in, we added new ones in. So our ability to keep flexing with their program as it progressed gave them the comfort and confidence that they were actually going to get to the end of this and still have data where they needed it to be.
Question on something you said earlier about the non-dependency on plugins and adapters and that type of thing. Mm-hmm. Does that imply, if you've got your own custom code in there, does that imply that most of your integrations are non-standard, in the sense that, if you've got a Salesforce system that you want to link to a HubSpot system, you guys wouldn't be the people to come to for that, because you go off and use a standard adapter for that? Your day-to-day business for this community, what's the low-hanging fruit, the value that you see most of the time?
Yeah, so the answer is we do actually do quite a lot of CRM to CRM integrations. And just to replay the question, it is, in essence, does our platform preclude us from certain types of integrations? Well, the answer is no, because I think connectors have a place, and you should absolutely use them where it makes perfect sense to do so. So if you've got a specific need, you see that that connector is going to fulfill that need, and it's unlikely it's going to create any problems in the future, then that is a perfectly sensible route to take. So fine, no problem. What we have found is that clients, agencies, partners work with clients where they sometimes try that route and it works to a degree, but then they hit walls. So they'll struggle with something, they can't, there's a nuance or some complexity in the integration that they have, and they're going to run into challenges. That's where we are an extremely good fit, where those connectors, just won't handle those particular scenarios.
I often talk about the 80-20 rule. A connector-based platform will generally get you 80% of the way there, and possibly quite easily sometimes, depending on your requirement. But generally that last 20% can be hard, and that's the nuances, that's the little difficult custom nuances that your particular integration might require. And oftentimes you'll find those connector platforms struggle to meet those requirements. And we do have a few customers who have been on that journey, who have gone and built something using one of those platforms and found actually, in actual fact, we've got one I'm thinking of with HubSpot, where they were linking HubSpot to Microsoft Dynamics, and actually the connectors that they could get out of the box with HubSpot, I think, were well and good, but they didn't deliver the functionality they particularly required. We were able to build them a custom integration that could do that and do that final 20%. The other thing is we often find if we get something reasonably standard, like HubSpot, Salesforce, accounts, contacts, deals, whatever the pattern is, we find we can template. So actually, we will build an integration for somebody that looks like that, and then somebody else will come along and say, "Oh, we want to do this similar," and we'll say, "Well, that's great. We can take a template, tweak it, nuance it to meet any custom requirements you've got," and that enables us to deliver it faster.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, another question? Oh, yes.
And I was very impressed to see your internal, like every integration date is like actually put days, not weeks or months. Because one of the projects I worked on took actually 1 year to complete on my side. However, it started actually 4 years ago. It's simply because of the readiness of the client.
Yep.
Just before they integrate the software and then like technology. Is there any advice you can give to any of the company that before they integrate the software, how they need to review whether they're actually ready to integrate the software?
Okay, so the question is just considering timeframes and the way the client approaches an integration project, some of the preparation and thinking they may need to do around that. I'll probably defer to John on this in terms of the thought process.
So the key word you say is readiness. So that's really important. We do find sometimes not all of our integrations are delivered in 9 days or whatever it was. Some do take longer, but elapsed time, yeah. But usually, it is probably a readiness issue. So sometimes we'll find the customer says, "Oh, I want an integration that looks like this," and they'll delve into the weeds and they'll talk about real-time integration or whatever in terms of actual technical delivery. And actually, you've got to say, step back, just tell us what your requirement is. What is the outcome that you want? Why do you want this data over here? And sometimes going through that journey with a customer can be the thing that takes the time. John mentioned earlier, sometimes getting access to systems can take time, but that's trivial in reality. The hardest part is being ready to understand what it is you want from an integration. So if the customer has started that thought process and started it wisely, we can help guide them, but that accelerates things a great deal.
Yeah. And again, if we're working alongside an implementation partner who is getting very intimate with the business process that either the client has or that they're aspiring to, that can help enormously, because if there's business analysts or whatever in play, then we can work directly with them as part of the picture as well.